There's Beatles in here. Suntory brandy. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The camera looking at it.
It's indicative of what the show is actually like.
Good. And you are seeing a screen. Should this bend down a little bit?
No, you look good.
Yeah.
Do you mind just quickly going into the Zoom and pressing to share my stuff?
Okay.
That's the last thing I need you to do. Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
And then back to your original screen. We are good to
That someone's excited.
That's Maya.
I know.
That's the one who named this thing.
I know. I'm aware. We're gonna have like the green border around it the whole time.
What?
We'll have the green border around it the whole time.
Yeah, well,
That's okay. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Bryce Miho, and I'm the marketing coordinator here at Poster House, the first and only museum dedicated to the history and the art of the poster. You're the best crowd so far. It is truly my pleasure this evening to welcome you all to our program, or rather our next edition of Genius on Display, featuring the founders of Kasa Collective, John KUDOS and Robert de St. Phalle, who we have proudly worked with in conjunction we have proudly worked in conjunction on a number of past exhibitions and experiences here at the museum. Known as a synergy of two award-winning agencies, KUDOS and Conduit, Kasa Collective has a distinct expertise in 2D, 3D, and 4D design, jointly producing high-impact experiences for cultural, corporate, and public spaces. Before we get started, I wanted to share just a few notes of accessibility of this event. This program is being live streamed on YouTube, and we will be available on the official Poster House channel after the event. For our YouTube audience, the automated closed captioning is available at the bottom of your screen, and you can turn that on or off by clicking the CC button, which you should see. This is one of our first hybrid events. We apologize for any technical difficulties, even though we got off to a wonderful start, and we appreciate your patience as we work for them. Secondly, as you can tell, this event is very, very popular. So if you do have an open seat in front of you, we do ask for you to jump up a little bit, but I think we are basically filled. There's also 3 seats available in the front if you'd like to join us as well. If you need any additional accessibility needs during this program, we'd be more than happy to help you at the front. Our lovely gallery assistants will be able to provide any and all assistance to make sure your experience is as comfortable as possible. The bathrooms are just located directly from across the front desk in the cafe. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to our 2 guests this evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, well, thanks for the generous introduction, and thank you for Poster House for organizing this. You guys are making us very nervous. You're getting a full house, except for 1 seat up front, if anybody wants to move up. So I feel like I'm echoing, but so I'm John KUDOS, and I'm Robert de St. Phalle, and we are Kasa Collective. To some people, it may be confusing. What is Kasa? What is a collective? But we are essentially 2 agencies who like to work together a whole lot. And this museum is one of the projects that we actually design and produce, right? So if you haven't been here before, or if you have been here before, all the interactive components you've seen, so the photo booth up front.
Yeah, all the permanent interactive exhibits, those were all done by us when the museum was actually built and constructed in the beginning. So
we've been here since the get-go.
Exactly. So anyway, of course, we have to kind of describe what we actually do. So, we coined the high impact interactive experiences, right? But essentially, we like to do meaningful work. We like to make work that are impactful or engaging, right? And in the introduction, Raji mentioned, we are 2D, 3D, 4D. So we structured the introduction with 2D, with starting with a flat world. And myself, as I guess a representation of the 2D world, right? My background is really graphic design. And then from graphic design, there's all these things related to it, like typography, UX, UI design, environmental graphics, motion graphics. And then with me specifically, as when I was a student, I like to hack things, so there's the web and software development components that comes with what I do every day, which lands me in the world of creative technology as well. One of my long-term mentors, so I actually worked for Abbott Miller, who is a partner in Pentagram for 7 years. He published a book recently. I highly recommend it. But when I was looking through the book recently, I realized that something he said really resonated with me, and I think subconsciously it's been like up at the back of my head. What is it that I do that keeps myself interested? And he talks about a book as a movie that you hold in your hand, an exhibition as a room with a plot. To me, there's a big component here that is storytelling, right? So how do you tell a story, and the format or the medium that you use to tell that story can change, but the story doesn't. So I'm going to also flip through the back of the book, and he talked about design and content. There's always this push and pull, right? But really, what solidified this idea for me is, as a graphic designer, this idea that you need to be able to separate form and content and then put them back together, right? And then you form, really resonated with me, and I think I see that looking back, I see that in reflected in a lot of my work as well. We structured this introduction with basically, a few snapshots of the kind of work that I do, and then Robert will do the same with his work. This is the more environmental design that we've done. So we have things that are strictly 2D. So you can see on the top left, this is exhibition graphics for Corning Museum of Glass. On the top right, that's for a museum, the Smithsonian National Museum of American Indian. And then I also have ventured in other things, like collaborating with architects to actually figure out how to create an exhibition that goes outside of the flat wall. So this is something that we did for the TDC, Type Directors Club. And of course, this room, we decided that can you do something with two-dimensional that actually engages you in a different way, right, emotionally. Also have done a lot of branding work, and nowadays when we talk about branding, we also talk about motion. What is the story that you can tell through a movement? And I've done this with many different clients, a lot of nonprofit, a lot of academic and cultural institutions. So every step of the way, we always think about what is that core story that we're trying to tell, right? With publication design, we've done many, some for museums, others for data researchers.
Is there a connection?
Did I?
Maybe.
We need tech support. Because we're not watching TV now. Something is up.
I think it's like an input issue. Is it because we're close? You want to turn this on? I think it's that because you're so close to the speaker.
Yes, community service. Community protection.
Turn it down. The winds. Keep going. It's an input issue. Yeah, I think if we come around, you can see what you're doing.
Should I unplug it? I mean, this is doing a weird thing right now. Let me just try that.
This is a good icebreaker though.
I know. Oh, interesting. It's a Black Panther. Yes.
That looks right.
Okay, and then something is up with my screen. Okay, so my keynote is crashing. Okay. This
Yes, I'm just
Okay.
shot.
keynote. Mind the keynote. Open recent. Okay, that's good. All right, we're back on track. Okay. Okay.
One more thing, sorry. Can
Oh, you need to share. Okay, all right.
Thank you all so much for your patience.
Okay,
We are good to go.
all right.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think I've covered it. Okay.
I think you're in the next one.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of editorial and publication design, many for museums, for
Yeah.
oh, this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right up there.
Okay, minimize it.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Okay, for the third time. Yeah, many publication design for museums, academic institutions, data oriented, LGBTQ community. So the whole, we ran the whole gamut, so to speak. Okay. And also many websites, including where we are right now, the Flatiron Nomad District. We created the website for that. The website for Poster House itself is also designed and built by us. And some random things like blockchain creative labs, which is actually really cool. And I think this is maybe the last slide for my introduction, but really, I take great pride in working with the communities that I care about. So recently we launched branding for the Stand with Asian Americans. So, we created animations, we created a branding system, and yeah, I remember. Sure. Oh, you have one. Okay.
All right. So I guess I'll give a little bit of an intro on my background and then get into some of my projects too. So maybe the next slide. So I went to Cooper Union for undergrad and I went into the art department, but I was one of these people that through, basically my whole life, I have really been kind of against specialization. So I took classes in architecture and engineering classes too. And as I came out of that experience, I just kind of looked at the world and tried to find other opportunities for hybrid projects, everything from crossovers between art and design and architecture, like exhibit design, things that cross engineering and art and design, like product design. And so this is my very kind of loose way of laying this out and thinking through how these different projects I've done. It could be consumer products, medical products, it could be wearables, it could be exhibits, conceptual sculpture, all these different things, even though they seem like kind of a hot mess, they're actually braided together in this continuum. And what it's caused me to do is really nail down my core process. You know, what's the heart of my process that runs common through all these different things? And for me, number one is, at this one, number one is being able to talk and understand a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and approach every kind of engagement as an opportunity for like understanding and collaboration. So that's kind of number one on the list. And that's how, you know, I think John and I kind of approach all these different projects that we do together as well. And then the other things that I do a lot of, I'm basically at my heart, I'm a maker. So I love to just create things with my hands, with any kind of tool I need. I cycle a lot in between kind of the virtual CAD space and then, you know, getting things out into the real world that might be through 3D printing or building machines that can sculpt things out, like CNC machines. If there's a machine that I need that doesn't exist, I just build it and then it can do the job for me. So I do a lot of that kind of building of things to make other things that I need. So maybe we'll go to the next slide. If that wasn't complex enough, the other thing that I like to do is work at different scales of design. And again, the reason why I like to do this is because working at the edges of things, where one scale meets another, there are opportunities for cross-contamination, for pollination. You can kind of bring something you learned from product design and bring it over to exhibit design, how people engage with spaces, with objects, how they perceive the world. All these things kind of ebb and flow throughout this. So I like to say I work across these different scales, you know, devices, things that you use that interact with your body kind of at the hand level or the face level. Wearables and accessories, things that go on the body. It's a different way of kind of engaging with the user. Spaces and environments. So, you know, that's what essentially this is. And then experience and culture. So I've worked with developing augmented reality systems, but then also kind of creative directing the content that goes in them. So thinking through those different dimensions is really helpful because I understand the system really well. Next slide, please. So just very quickly here, this is kind of a really quick snapshot of some of the more industrial design and product design things that I do. So these are wearable tech and med tech or biotech projects I've done. Again, a lot of AR and VR, a lot of kind of wearable health monitors and some implants that I've worked on, and a couple of medical devices as well, and an exoskeleton. And then I went to grad school, and I happened to go with a guy, Desi Santiago, who introduced me to a few of his friends, and one of them was this person named Zaldi, and he's a fashion designer for pop stars. And they heard that I made a lot of wearable tech, and they're like, make stuff for pop stars. So that just kind of segued right into that. I've done projects for Japanese boy bands, for Cirque du Soleil, for Katy Perry and Lady Gaga. And we'll talk a little bit more about one of those later on. So there you go. And then kind of going up one scale, getting into, again, kind of environments and experiences. I worked for a time at Pentagram, and that's how John and I met. We were both there at the same time working for Abbott Miller, the same partner. And we were, you know, heads down working a lot and kind of trading tips on and stories and trying to kind of figure out how we could do these things together. So I did a couple of projects for Harley Davidson there. We worked together on a installation for the Freud Museum in Vienna. And Most recently, I've been doing some kind of tech expos, and then in the lower left corner, I was involved with some of the design fabrication tasks for the LGBTQ monument that's on the west side highway. It's in the park there. So that's right there now. And because I like to make things, I just make things all the time. I make furniture. I have a little shop at my home, and I work with a lot of my business model is I'm kind of the hub. So I work with a lot of different people. And if I need to pull them in on projects, personal projects, work projects, that's kind of my model. It's like a hub and spoke model with a lot of different specialized folks. So there you go. Now we'll get into 4D. Ready? All right,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah, so essentially, what Kasa Collective is the combination of not just the two of us, it's actually, a lot of the people who work with us, but with us on the lead to make sure that, a lot of conversations happen the right way, the executions and everything is delivered correctly. And typically, a structure of a project looks like this, where you have two sides. There's the production team and there's the client. And within the production team, because we are design centric and technology centric, there's always a design team, engineering, and the production, right? And more often than not, we have multiple companies or agencies, getting involved in a project to fill in whatever gap there is. And it's usually our job to make sure that, every single hole gets filled in. On the client side, we always kind of, figure out who will project manage this client, this project, and then be the face of the team. And then on the client side, we figure out what is the goal, what are curate, who's going to make the decisions, curating, and coming with content.
Yeah, and a big piece of this is the project management kind of layer that you see there, and engaging where I kind of get folded in a lot is working with the project manager or doing it myself and figuring out how we're taking this design and actually making it a real thing. That's where I get folded in a lot.
Yeah. So we'll start by sharing a few projects.
Sure. So these are some projects that we've kind of done separately, and then there are a couple that we've done together as Kasa, so it's a bit of a mix. First one is Cirque du Soleil. This is actually an older project. I think this was back in 2010, 2011. But I was given kind of a napkin sketch, trying to figure out a new look for this Immortal tour that was for Michael Jackson. So it was this big blowout event that they were having. I believe it toured Las Vegas and LA, and they needed a look that was kind of a cross between RoboCop and a linebacker that lit up. So I had to figure out how to do this, and these projects are typically very quick. So what's interesting about this is AI and ML are such big terms now, but we were using kind of weak AI back then. I had a plugin for my CAD program so that I could basically use scripting to understand the topology of the human body and convert that over to regular grids that deform over the surface and kind of control that in a nice way. So this is kind of one part 3D design, and then another part computational design to make it all flow. And then we also had to figure out how are all the LEDs going to go into this and get hooked up to essentially the media relay system. So these are concept renderings showing kind of the unlit and lit state. And when we were working on this, the design was for the entire body to be lit up. And when we went to production, they said, well, that's just too complicated. So it ended up being mostly the torso and the shoulder area.
We get that a lot.
Yeah. But it did happen. And, figuring out how to convert that 3D design into something that's essentially like a fabric exoskeleton that still looks rigid was very complicated, making sure that it worked with the choreography and the movements and having all the range of motion work and then make it fit within the overall aesthetic that they were working toward. Those were all the challenges. So these are a couple of views of them actually kind of happening in the field.
Those question marks are programmable.
Yeah, so that's all synced with the music and programmed, and it's complicated. So, the next one is even more complicated. So this was when I was working with Draper, which is a nonprofit R&D firm up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They were the ones who actually developed all the guidance, navigation, control, and the computer for the Apollo missions to go to the moon. And it was the 50th anniversary. They wanted to commemorate it, but they also wanted to use whatever we built for other projects, for billable work that we were doing. So we had other current space projects we were working on. So we got enough momentum and buy-in that we as a group and with the CEO and the head of space, we decided we would build a simulator that simulated landing on the moon with a moving cockpit that was controlled with robotics, and you could control it from within. So it's this crazy multimedia experience. It's very complicated again. It was a 2-story tall mini IMAX theater that had projection mapping all on the inside so that you could have the lunar environment kind of around you when you were standing in the cockpit. Next one. And then the cockpit itself was tricky. We had to kind of balance designing something to commemorate the Apollo capsule, but also at the flip of a switch, we wanted to make it updatable and feel modern with a new UI and make it feel clean and modern as well. So the whole thing you can see is mounted on a robotic base, which you'll see in a second how that works. And so my role on this was I was basically in charge of the fabrication and the 3D design of everything within that IMAX theater. And coordinating with the vendors so that they were all working together, and then coordinating the installation as well. Next one. And then we had a team develop a new UI, and we could test this out with the whole system and see how that worked. And this is the old Apollo UI, so at the flip of a switch you could go between the two and see which one was working better and how they're different. And this was part of a much bigger exhibit that commemorated essentially the engineering story behind the Apollo landing. And this is a very short video. Is that okay? These are a couple of engineers who worked on it. They were our test subjects. What's that? That's cool. So you can see the whole robotic base is called a hexapod, and it moves up and down and can have a full range of motion so that when you turn, it turns with you. And the funniest part of this is to actually land it well. You wanted to not do that much. You just wanted little single clicks here and there, and that's actually how you landed it. The people that got in and wrenched it to one side, they would crash right away. Yeah, so this was a huge project, and a big team worked on it. We had a lot of different designers and engineers all kind of working together on this. Yeah. Always get that.
Okay. Waiting for them to land safely.
Yeah, they made it.
There you go. Yeah,
High five.
done. Okay, so next, this is actually a project that came my way from an exhibition designer called Think Design, and they were tasked to basically design the whole Power of Science exhibit for the Frost Science Museum in Florida. And we were brought in as part of another company called Squint Opera, and our task was really to help them with all the UX UI components for a few of the big interactives. So one of them is this multiplayer touch table experience, right? You can have up to 3 players here. Obviously, this is in Florida, so the focus or the topic is really has a lot to do with hurricanes and the life of the population in water, right? But this one specifically is called the Build Your Own Coastline, and I have a short video here for you. So up to 3 players can play this game, where you can build your own waterline property, and then you can build this seawall and so on, and then every round you get rated, and then you have a budget to spend and so on, right? There are other games that we also created. This is do you stay or do you go? You have all this overloaded information from Twitter, from the website, the TV channel, like you should leave now or whatnot, and you get rated based on your answers. And of course, you can't have a science museum without periodic table, right? That was in fact the first question they asked. Do you guys know the periodic table? Luckily, one of our designers actually love it. And this game is actually a 2-player. I'm calling it a game because it's a 2-player experience. There are 2 screens where people can learn about different elements, and then if you pick the right 2 elements, it generates a chemical reaction in the middle screen, which is really nice.
All right, and then this is a project. I'm gonna try to go a little faster here. So this was a project we did last year, and it was a concept design for a new marine center in Saudi Arabia at the Yanbu kind of district. So just blow through. So these renderings that you see are by Baca Architects. So this is a good example when we collaborate with another firm, and they kind of had the vision for how to build this kind of big, beautiful space and make it work with everything, all the space claims inside. And then our tasks were thinking through kind of permanent interactives or flexible interactives. This was a map where you could go up and have kind of projection mapped interactives kind of plop down on top of this topographic map with this nice cast resin water. And then we had a much bigger space. They didn't want to have a permanent set of aquariums. So we had to think about ways to kind of, again, projection map aquarium spaces into this exhibit and make sure that we had enough space for didactics and then kind of immersive displays and how to mix things up a little bit. And this is the little kids area where you could have, again, projection maps, kids go in. And what we were doing here is really at the kind of concept notional stage, just trying to kind of kick out some concepts and get some momentum behind them. And then on the upper floor, we had basically a flex space where they wanted to have periodic kind of cultural exhibits. All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna try. Some of the topics for the next few projects is, I would say, heavier, right? But this is also coming along with my interest in social justice. A filmmaker, Whitney Dow, does a lot of documentary series, and he created this project called the Whiteness Project. And this particular installation was done for the Tribeca Film Festival, titled Intersection of I. There are a few parties involved here. The architect is called Lotec, and they created this really interesting way of seating people, right? And in this triangular composition. And then opposite of that, you have 2 quite large 4K projectors. So you are presented with 2 different screens. On the left side is what we call the data wall. And on the right side is the story, right? And the way you interact with the space is through a microphone. So she's holding a microphone that says, "Let's talk." And then as you walk in, you can see this microphone being passed over to different people. And then you can then look at the screen, and then you can see the different, these are actually millennials, right? They were interviewed. There's a 1 to 2 minute clip from each person. And then there's a quote that directly refers to that individual. And you can call that person's name through the microphone. And they're not just portraits that are actually video portraits, right? So it does give you this sense of reality immediately as you walk in. And then say if you call Amanda, this is what you would actually see.
If I said I'm Black, people would believe me. If I said I'm Hispanic, people would believe me. If I said I'm white, nobody would believe me because I don't look white. I'm multiracial, so my mom is white and my dad's from the Dominican Republic. He looks like a Black man, but he's Hispanic. And so because of that, I don't necessarily identify with one, but more so with all. And so it's hard for me to think of myself as a mixed or multiracial person because there is no true identity for that, at least not in today's age. Growing up, whenever I had to fill out whichever race group I was belonging to, I would always fill in African American just because that's what the teachers told me to do. I almost every single time that happened, tax test or whatever it may be, I raised my hand and I said, you know, I'm white, Hispanic, and Black. Which one should I bubble? Bubble Black, always. And so I think it had more to do with maybe how my teachers perceived me than how I perceived myself, because if it were up to me, I would have bubbled all three.
So most of the videos are like that. It's very honest, very raw, you know, but it's also the truth, right? This is the perception that people have. This is the perception they have as students, millennials, right? So to build on that experience, we created this system basically to enter the space. The price of admission is your skin color. As basically there's a person standing in front of this iPad taking a picture of your skin. You walk in, within a few seconds, you see your skin patch getting added to this color wheel with the question, what is white, right? And within a few seconds later, that patch actually moves into the right position. So everything is done in the background. You know, this is the data wall. There's also conversation on Twitter about people's reaction to the project. Another one is closer to home. This is actually at the Four Freedoms Park. This is in Roosevelt Island. That little island between Manhattan and Queens. If you don't know where that is, you can take a gondola over there. So the director of the park actually approached us and asked, you know, hey, we're doing this installation with the artist Sean Leonardo, and he has this vision of creating this gigantic hand installation on both sides of the park so that it's visible from Manhattan and Queens, connecting the two stories. And here's the brief.
The objective here is to very much focus on the narrative potential of just the gesture of hands. And the reason why is that it intersects with my performance practice, which, if you're not familiar, very much hones in on what can be conveyed by body language that can't possibly be articulated in spoken word.
So as part of the project, Sean conducted a few workshops with a group of people that, you know, had volunteered and he had interviewed previously, but they all went to the park. And this is a very short clip of one of those workshops where he really honed in and, you know, get intimate in the conversations and try to understand, you know, how can you express your feelings, your thoughts through the gestures of hand. I wasn't supposed to show up there, but okay. And then one of the goals that he has is to basically figure out how to use the phone to activate this story, this narrative, tell the story to the phone, right? And what we've done is we use machine learning so that we can train the phone to recognize the hand from across the river. So we have to collect so many images from, you know, in different light conditions, sunny, cloudy, different times of day, so that we can do, yeah, so this is basically just a quick glimpse of, you know, how many images we collected for this, about that much. And the result is quite interesting because we created this hand meter, we dubbed it, that allows the phone to recognize the hand, you know, through machine learning, right? And this is the camera on your phone loaded through a web browser. It's a very simple technology, but then this is across the river and it recognizes that hand. So the final installation actually looks like this. It doesn't look like anything. In fact, you're there and there's this instruction, right? You then scan that QR code, you get to the website. There's a very brief intro to with the artist statement. And then from there, you load the camera, and then here you are instructed to find the hands. And then from there, let's wait for me to catch up there. You get the hand, and it actually loads this.
Okay,
clip.
in saying the freedom for one, it must mean a freedom from wanting these basic things, a freedom from feeling empty, a feeling from feeling alone, a freedom from struggling financially, a freedom for just knowing you'll be able to eat tonight. It doesn't have to be morning, it doesn't have to be day, at least I can eat tonight, at least I'll get to sleep. These are things so many of us don't get.
Hey, so now we get to talk about the exhibits here, finally. If you haven't been downstairs, this is where the exhibit is. I think I'll talk about it in contextually how the briefing that we receive is basically, we have a collection of posters and artifacts. And what we learn is the curator, Esperanza Humphrey, I don't know if she's here today, but the goal is to really reflect on the power of branding and communication, how the Black Panther Party actually utilize all these mediums to rally community support and create their own narratives.
So we're going to go through this quickly. The first thing we do is we try to go into the space and figure out what are the best flows, how can we optimize this for the user flow through the space, traffic patterns. We want to make sure that they can engage as much as possible with the material, and we basically don't really want our whatever we create to get in the way. We want it to be conducive. So we worked through this very quickly at the beginning with them, and we settled on this top simple flow that kind of leads you through the space as opposed to the other two bottom. We did some quick CAD mock-ups of these just to block it out and get a sense of, okay, what's the scale of this? What are we really thinking about? What are the pinch points? Do we have clearances?
Yeah, and I think we can't really tell the story of the Black Panther without talking about Huey Newton, right? So this is a photograph of him in the 67. And whenever he's portrayed, he is always portrayed without a smile. And he's always portrayed holding some sort of weapon, right? In this case, he's holding two. And this is actually a direct reaction, or maybe even the reason why the Black Panther Party existed is because of the poster on the left. The perception of Black people was so condescending, right? It's either a humor or a sex object, right? There's so many things that is just not right. So that Huey felt like we need to be able to create this space, empower the community, and rally support, right? So some of these artifacts you see here are also downstairs, but political campaign posters is one of their mediums to do this. The Black Panther newsletter on the right is also another medium that they use, right? So we initially proposed two different ideas. This is concept A, where we basically looked at this typeface called Compacta. It's based on rub-on letterings, but it's also used a lot in posters. So we thought this idea that, it's about rallying people, right? It's really interesting. And also creating something really big, bold, and huge and strong, powerful, right? So this concept in 3D form could look like this. So as you approach the entrance to the gallery, it actually wraps around, kind of leads you into the space. And you may actually discover another word, panther in this case, right, as you weave through the space. The second idea, which we ended up going with, is based on the actual protest signs. You can see the two panels, right? The black one that says Black Power 2 and Black People. They're really derived from this idea that there's two panels that kind of connect each other, empower each other. And then the typeface is super important for us because we want if you're a graphic designer, typography is like the DNA to a design, right? So we need to make sure that what typeface we use is completely relevant. So this is one called Bayard, designed by Vocal Type. And it's actually based on this march, the march on Washington's from the 63. And in the picture, you can see John Bayard, who is actually a close advisor to Martin Luther King, right? And he was known as the really good organizers of the civil rights movement. So back to the renderings, eventually we settled on a typeface that embodied that idea of protest. And then also, this is very early ideation that we pitched essentially, right? And then we ended up going with this. You can talk about this.
Sure. And so an important thing with this is trying to figure out blocking, how this is kind of flowing and doing test layouts. So this is an iterative process. We have to kind of hone this over time. But this is where we ended up. So you can see we have each wall kind of represented. And what we're really trying to think through is, as you're moving through the space, are there moments where we want to kind of compress you physically and then also kind of pull attention to the content at the same moment? So we have to think about where those are falling per wall. So it's a very, even though it's 2D, it's also a very spatial process. So this is kind of our final layout here, and we had to go through and think through ADA accessibility. Is all this, are there any kind of pinch points where people can't go through if they're in a wheelchair? And so these are the kind of bird's eye views of everything in CAD.
I think we have this rendering here because I'm always impressed by how close the final product is compared to the rendering. But this is actually how we imagine it. And through some conversations, we decided that hand painting the sign, the typography is actually completely relevant. And the team at Kasa were able to find a muralist who's able to do this. So it's really impressive. And then we have little moments like this, where you see the star, and as you walk around the corner, you see the eagle peeking in.
Yeah, and so the other thing we wanted to do is call, basically make it feel constructed in a certain way, almost kind of loose and layered, and have the feeling of either posters or, protest signs kind of layered through the space as well. So that was something we tried to keep in there. Another important thing, we had a lot of artifacts that needed to be displayed, but we didn't have room for that. It's a really tight space. So we figured out a way that was ADA compliant to kind of have this angled low display case that seemed to work really well. It doesn't get in your way at all. It just kind of lets you go through the space. This is it in kind of like the CAD screenshot concept view. And then this is it in practice.
Yeah, so I think for those who don't understand what that means, ADA is for accessibility. So if you have a wheelchair, you're not going to bump onto that vitrine because there's enough clearance, and also you can access all the content. You can read it without problem with that height. Yeah.
So we can go through these, I think, pretty quickly, but this is just kind of showing the before and afters, and we'll go down there and check it out in a bit. All right, last one. We got this far.
Okay, so I'll give you a quick context here. Obviously we're excited when Kasa approached us about the project, but it was immediately obvious to us that it was going to be challenging because this is about a century of design history in Japan. So we have to figure out how to tell one storyline, within this space that spans a century, right? And there's also a really strong reference to printmaking tradition in Japanese design and Japanese poster design specifically.
Yeah, so what was interesting about this is this space is actually a really interesting challenge from an exhibit design point of view. There are two entrances And every time that I've been here, people use different, sometimes they go in the exit, sometimes they go through that way. There are multiple angles you could go through. And we realized because we had this chronological progression, we really wanted to be more directed with the flow. So the flow became a really important thing from the get-go. This was our kind of free form flow, and then we settled on something that we call the kind of folding fan flow, where you have these three big panels as you walk into the space, kind of evocative of a folding Japanese fan. And what was interesting was I kind of got selfish with this, and I based it on how I moved through this space. So every time I come here, I go through that door, and some people go kind of straight this way, some people hook around. I usually just kind of go that way and then come back. So better or worse, this is all kind of, you're now experiencing my typical walk through this space as the exhibit. And I think what was interesting was that Poster House was really receptive to this. They hadn't done a very directed flow like this before. So this was really a good opportunity to see how it worked.
It actually also worked out because there are existing walls that we need to use, right?
Yeah.
That was part of the requirements.
Yeah, Poster House is good, has a good kind of focus on being sustainable and green. So they have these big prefab walls. They wanted us to reuse them, so we're not just kind of running through materials, which is great. So these are the quick CAD mock-ups, just making sure that everything kind of makes sense in space. Getting a sense of how it feels in scale.
So I think because of the printmaking tradition that's relevant to this exhibit, we started looking at some inspirational materials. So these are things that you could find in antique shops, especially of just Japanese wood print. And we're really intrigued by the texturing that happens when you look at closely, and also the use of color that kind of fades, as you begin to go down. We started thinking about, well, how can we use colors, how we can establish palettes that feel Japanese, it has the texture of this printmaking without showing anything. So the first concept is to actually do a triptych, which is, from the folding fan wall. And then what if we just blow up made in Japan? We use this typeface that's really delicate, but also allows us to create this kind of wood print quality, this misregistration. And you have these really strong colors that are based on some of the posters that you see here. So in the rendering, it kind of looks like this.
Yeah, and this one was interesting, but it felt very light in the space and kind of receded a bit. So we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, there you go. The second concept is ultimately what all was the design director of the museum was really intrigued by.
Yeah. So this one took its reference from this poster. It's a famous poster, which I think is right back that away. And
so this poster it's like if you're if I say Milton Glaser, you would know who that is, right? In Japan, if you say Iko Tanaka, you just know. It's like a godfather of graphic design. So this poster is super iconic. Everybody knows it, and we thought it's just appropriate, even though typically we don't do super color like this, right? In a gallery wall.
yes,
So it's a very bold decision to go this route, right? And then of course, there's a reason behind the typeface. There's a strong influence in what changed the history of graphic design and poster design in Japan, which is one of them is industrialization, which completely changed Japan in a very short period. And then after that is globalization. There's also World War, right? So Japan has this interesting history of being the aggressor with World War I and also the victim, right, in World War II. So they've experienced both, and everything that we want this typeface to basically embody that. And we found this, which is done by Nikkei Maru, done by Inari Type, based in Brazil. The typeface is based on lettering found on immigration ships. So Japanese immigrants came to the American continent, and you see this all the time. So we thought we love the way they look, how bold they are, how industrialized it is. It's very relevant.
yeah. So one of the things early on, we actually didn't quite have a sense of how this was going to work in this space. And I remember we had a conversation, we figured out that it would be nice to have, as you walk in, each panel kind of goes up a scale until after that last third panel, the whole room is kind of supersized, like everything is large and architectural scale. So that's what those 3 panels do. It tries to kind of build up that scale so then it can take on the whole room.
Yeah, and in my selfish reason, I'm also but you know, I basically thought we need the Mount Fuji in the space. So we've been kind of earmarking, there's a Mount Fuji right there on that wall, right? And sure enough, I think we're able to keep it. But what we're showing here is how the shapes that start small, as you walk through the space, they become bigger and bigger. And eventually, when you're in this gallery behind me, you're inside a green dot, you're inside the design, right? So it's a very subliminal.
Yeah, and this was a challenge, because if you go to certain museums, certain natural history museums, there's the tendency to paint the walls around artifacts, a coded cultural color. And we did not want what we did with these walls to provincialize this work. We wanted it to kind of be an extension or complement to. So that was really kind of a delicate kind of line we had to walk with this. So
yeah, so that's a picture of Ashley, one of the designers working on the project, just to kind of demonstrate the scale of this. And you don't appreciate how big this is, right? This is like 3 plotter friends stitched together with blue tapes, right? And then she still has to stand on this step ladder. And also like the number of colors, I don't think I've done an exhibition with this many colors, right, on the wall. But it's really delicate because the intent is to use the color as an undertone. That's a way to connect the story, not to overwhelm the actual posters. So we had 3 or 4 rounds of this color proofing to just get it right, you know, because you change one color, the other one is to change, and it's complicated.
yeah, and this is where, you know, again, a shout out to Poster House, because they had to, sorry, I forgot it was an animation. So they had to do a lot of support tasks. They had to, you know, paint all of this or figure out colors that matched paint and vinyl so that everything is kind of seamless. It was a lot of work on the fabrication side.
And this is the eventual flow that we landed with. You know, there's a clear 1-line narrative through everything, with occasional openings that allows you to step in and out of the timeline.
Yeah, we wanted it to feel directed, but also permeable. So having these kind of vents, if you will, these spaces between these 3 triptych panels, as you walk through, you have a sense, okay, that things continue, but that's also, you know, guided this way. So there's some directionality to it.
So this is another moment where here's the rendering,
Right.
and here's the photo, right? Very close.
I wouldn't call these, so these are CAD screenshots, but another thing to call out, so we wanted the display cases are actually fairly minimal in here. There are only a few of them, but the ones that we had, we wanted them to feel like they really fit in the exhibit itself and had a place here.
And I took this picture because I'm very impressed by the fabrication team John led here, you know, where this is actually hand painted. I don't know if you realize that, you know, where all the lines connect, they don't overlap, you know, it's amazing, right? It's like that meets there, you know, it's just, I don't know how you do that.
And they still talk to us after all this. So that's always good.
And
Oh,
here's my Mount Fuji. There you go. Yeah, there you go, with a person there. And that's Phalle, our main designer, working on this project. And shout out to the curators as well, who Nozomi and the right, she flew in from Singapore just for this, and Aaron, who's in Philadelphia, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so this is this is that moment where, you enter the final gallery and you are in this green space but you still see these notions of, you're inside a geometric shape of sorts. And of course, Ola, who's the design director at Closer House here, posing for this. That's it.
Thank you again to our wonderful guests, John and Robert of Kasa. We really do appreciate you being here. And truly, this is like one of my favorite exhibits personally. There's just so many of those like minute details you're talking about that you don't really appreciate until you like look up close. So it's really a joy to view in its entirety and also in its minuscality, if you will. And then we're all art majors here, we love words. So for the next portion of today's conversation, Don and Robert will actually be taking all of us through both exhibitions, so both in Black Panther as well as Made in Japan. So we will begin in Black Panther, just so that we are able to quickly change out the space so that you have the space to roam around Made in Japan shortly. So before, if I don't see you again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It has been such a pleasure both to see you and to have a conversation with the two of you. The work you do is really, really amazing. So one more time, thank you.
Hi. Yes. So we just go downstairs.
Okay. You're free to.
I can unplug this.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, I have to log out from Zoom, right?
Yes. I'll call it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want to go first, or I'll just need like 2 minutes to shut this down. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What's
So you know someone in the video.
That's so weird.